Hey comrades, how's it going? My name's William Morrison, and I'm your British Marxist-Leninist and anti-imperialist based in Scotland. And today we're joined with our Irish comrade Èamonn MacGrianna. He's an Irish good friend of mine, Marxist-Leninist, and I've been on his show before. I've been on his channel before, which is Alternative Political Analysis.
That's correct.
That's correct. So I've been on his channel before, so I just thought I would return the favour and invite him on to my channel. So today, we're going to be talking about something that really shouldn't be that controversial. It's common sense in our view, but it probably will get quite a few stirs, but we really don't care. We are going to be reading out and analysing two new bills that have been introduced in Scotland in the past year. And we're talking about two of them because it's pretty much a trap. Before we go on to that, just, Èamonn, how are you doing? Maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit.
Yep, you've covered much of it, but basically I'm an Irish Republican Marxist-Leninist from Belfast, and I'm not a fan of the Gender Recognition Reform Bill or the Hate Crime and Public Order Bill in Holyrood. And was the term trap a pun?
Yeah, no, I seriously, it's a trap. I know how the two bills will go in hand, and we'll talk about this later on.
They're statutory tripwires, so they are.
Exactly, yeah, they're legal tripwires.
If you violate one, you violate the other. And what's it? 2 years and a fine is the maximum penalty in the Gender Recognition Bill.
Yes, yeah. So you can get punished quite severely for speaking out against something or just showing disdain. You can actually get in trouble for speaking out about quite a serious social problem that's happening in Scotland right now. And no one's talking about it, and no one is interested in talking about it because people are scared to be accused of all these stupid labels that the liberals give us. Whereas me and you, as Marxist-Leninists, we don't really care about labels and stuff like that. We are materialists, and we will talk about things regardless of how uncomfortable it might make some people. That's what communists should do, and that's why we're different from leftists. Because leftists, they would just shy away from these kind of subjects and not address it, and then these problems have become more and more serious as the years go on, whereas serious Marxist-Leninists who actually want to help workers and we still want to focus on class issues, and we do talk about this kind of stuff no matter how uncomfortable it makes people. So for some context, if you don't know what we're talking about, some context, there was a bill passed in the Scottish Parliament in 2021, and it is called the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act 2021. It's pretty much a new bill that kind of standardizes and uniforms quite a lot of hate crimes that were kind of sporadic. They were kind of all over the place with Scottish law. This law kind of brings them all together in one bill and just kind of uniforms it a little bit. The second bill, is the Gender Recognition Reform Bill, which is actually just an amendment from a 2004 Act. So pretty much one by one, we're going to read these out, or I'll read them out, I'm not really sure. And then we're just going to talk about them individually. And then at the end, we're just going to sum up and we're going to talk about them kind of together, how they will work in relation to each other, and the kind of people that will be trapped and tripwired in this absolute fabrication of wokeism. And it just shows that compared to the other countries in the UK, Scotland is by far the most degenerate and most hyper progressive and the most just decadent society in the UK. This same bill was attempted to get pushed to Westminster, and it was rejected overwhelmingly. It was rejected. Whereas here, the Liberals in Scotland, the woke left in Scotland, who run things here, a major majority, it was pushed through Parliament, and here we are. We're subjected to it now. The working class are subjected to it, and we have to watch what we say. Or if not, we can be fined. So, are you able to see these? Are you able to read them out, or do you just want me to do it, Èamonn?
Go ahead. Can I just make 2 points?
Yeah, please do, man. Please do.
On the Marxist-Leninism, Marx said in the German ideology, we should see individuals as they are, not how they or other people perceive them to be. And our Marxist-Leninism, we also should have a scientific methodology to approaching matters. And I would like to know, do you know the breakdown of those who were elected to Holyrood who voted for it and those who got in by proportionality under the additional member system who voted for it? Because how can you say it's democratic if a load of legislators who got in through the back door voted for it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this bill was voted by MSPs, members of the Scottish Parliament. There's 129 of them. So there's 56 MPs in Scotland. They go to Westminster, and MSPs, they sit in Holyrood. They sit in the Scottish Parliament. There's 129 MSPs, and I think about 84 MSPs voted in favour of this bill, which is quite a large majority. The only people who voted against it were the Conservatives, who are the opposition here in Scotland. They're the second biggest party here. I'll talk about that in another video, why that is, and not Labour. But yeah, so Labour, the Greens, the SNP, all these kind of wokey progressive parties, they all voted overwhelmingly in favour of this bill being passed. I mean, it was proposed by the SNP, the Scottish National Party. And almost, the only party that voted against it was the Conservatives. Some Labour MSPs voted against it too, but they were actually punished by the whip because they were told to vote for it, which just shows how little power MSPs actually have in voting for bills.
So Kezia Dugdale imposed it on her own party?
Sorry?
Was it Kezia Dugdale who imposed it on her own party?
I think so, yeah. No, Kezia Dugdale. She's a leader. I think she's a leader of the Scottish Labour.
But you don't know how many of the 84 were in through the back door as additional members?
That's a good question. So yeah, 129, about 86 are backdoor regional MSPs. Out of those, I think there was about 70 out of the 86 regional MSPs that voted for this bill. I think I remember that breakdown.
It doesn't seem very democratic.
No. I mean, I literally just submitted my essay for politics at university yesterday, which was about electoral reform. And yeah, I spent a good few paragraphs just completely shitting on the AMS system in Scotland because it's absolute. It's ridiculous. It's confusing. Nobody really understands how it works. It's completely undemocratic and unfair. Like, yeah, it's really stupid, to be honest.
I prefer the single transferable vote myself.
You prefer the STB?
Yeah, it seems simpler, and plus it's directly proportional to the electorate.
Yeah, I mean, you can vote as many times as you want on as many people as you want, and you just list your preferences. One being the person who you want, and you can vote. You can have as many people on that list as you want.
Go straight down the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty proportional. It can be a little bit confusing to people who aren't politically literate, but I mean, I think it is the most democratic and the most fair, I guess. I mean, compared to first past the post and AMS, it's just...
Or closed lists.
Yeah, oh God, don't get me started with that. All right. Do you have anything else to say before I start reading this?
No, go ahead.
All right,
on a bit of a tangent there, so with it.
No, love to hear it. So yeah, this first bill we're going to be talking about was passed in April 2021, and it is called the Hate Crime and Public Order Scotland Act 2021. It says here, this hate crime legislation helps recognise the particular impact and harm caused by hate crime to the victim, the group to which the victim belongs, and to wider society. On the 11th of March 2021, the Scottish Parliament voted to pass the Hate Crime and Public Order Bill, and it was given royal assent, aka royal permission, because that still has to happen. That's just a formality in Scottish law. It has to have assent by the royal family. So we're given assent in April 2021. The hate crime.
Lizzie's legacy.
Yeah. Hate crime continues to be dealt with under existing legislation until such time as the Act comes into force. Once commenced, the Act will consolidate, modernise and extend existing hate crime legislation, update the list of characteristics included in hate crime legislation, and create new stirring up of hatred offences that will apply to the protected characteristics of age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and variations in sex characteristics. And it will also restate the existing standalone offences of stirring up racial hatred and of racially aggravated harassment. All of Scotland's hate crime laws will be located in the Act. The Act also includes provisions to ensure that information on hate crime recorded by the police and information on hate crime convictions will be published annually. So that's just a little bit of context. That's just a little bit of what this Act will look like when it's finally, well, it's being enforced now. It was about a year ago it was enforced. So this Act is in place now. This is a thing now. And I mean, I guess we can just analyse it point by point. So consolidate, modernise and extend existing hate crime legislation. It's a bit vague. So, like, what do you think that means exactly?
I think it's deliberately ambiguous, so it can be broadly applied. And on racially aggravated harassment, does that include Anglophobia, Hibernophobia, and anti-white racism? I'm
glad you brought that up, actually. That's really interesting. Yeah, so this is a bill that was passed overwhelmingly by the SNP, and despite Èamonn and I's disagreement on Scottish independence, we both at least agree that the SNP is a racist party. They are Anglophobic. They hate the English with a passion. And under SNP rule for the past 14 years that they've been in power here, hate crime against the English has skyrocketed and has actually been encouraged under the SNP government. And this anti-English hate, this Anglophobia, has only been exacerbated under the SNP's rule. And so, yeah, it's interesting to think, will that be included in racially aggravated harassment and racial hatred? Probably not.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah, sure.
How does that work out in places like Berwick and the borders? Basically, would that not alienate people around Antonine's Wall? Because it's proximal to England. Obviously, there's going to be people of English descent and Scottish people there who have family in England. And you say Holyrood has control of the police. Sure, so that means the responsibility lies squarely at the SNP's door. They control the budget and they control law enforcement. So they could have nipped it in the bud, and that could have won over people from no DS. So it could have, if they'd actually tackled it and demonstrated, see, we can treat British and English people with respect, but the signals is clear to those with xenophobic tendencies, which become violent.
Yeah, so I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, a lot of nationalists think that they can get away with how bad things are getting in Scotland because they just blame everything on Westminster, and it's not actually fair because the Scottish Parliament since 1997 have had devolution. They've had devoluted powers, which means that not everything's reserved. Not all powers and responsibilities are now reserved to Westminster. The Scottish Parliament have lots of their own devolved powers now. Law and the police are amongst those devolved powers. Scotland has its own police force, which does not have a connection to Westminster and the English metropolitan police forces. Like this, Scotland doesn't have a metropolitan police, whereas England does. Like we have a different system for policing, and which is the SNP's responsibility. And we also have our own Scottish statute law, we have a different law. We have a different legal system than England. So these are devolved powers, which the SNP is fully responsible for. But yeah, a lot of nationalists just want to, everything that goes wrong, they just want to push to Westminster, it was their fault, which is not true at all. And you asked that question about how that works, how this xenophobia works in the borders. You'll actually find that some of the most nationalistic areas in Scotland are done at the borders, because they're the closest to the border. So they feel like it's their responsibility to defend Scotland from these English intruders. So actually you'll find that at the border regions in Scotland are some of the most intense nationalism and the most anti-English hatred that you'll actually find, because they're close to the borders. They feel like it's their responsibility to defend Scotland against English workers. It's just it's very stupid in my opinion. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if anti-English hatred will be included in this bill. I assume not, since the SNP very much benefits from English discrimination.
Hypothetical question here. If you were a Tory Prime Minister, and given how big your mandate in England is, and someone comes down from Holyrood asking you to devolve yet more powers, and you see anti-English hate crimes north of Antonines Wall, are you more likely to give them that power, or say, go screw yourselves?
The latter. 100% the latter. I tell them to go shove it somewhere else. I don't even think Scotland should have its own parliament. I'm against devolution as it stands now. I think that Northern Ireland should have its own assembly, but Wales and Scotland, I really don't think that they should even have their own parliament as it stands now. So yeah, if I'm seeing all these English people get sent back home, beaten half to death, chased down the street when a Scottish football team loses and they get drunk at a pub, and these English people are chased down the street just because they're English. If I've been seeing that on the rise because of the SNP, and an SNP fucking First Minister says, "Oh, can we have more powers?" Oh, I would see that justification to shut them down altogether. Never mind giving them more devolved powers. They already control a hell of a lot. They're not doing a good job of what they already have control of. Scotland has control of the NHS here in Scotland. There's a Scottish NHS, and the NHS here in Scotland are not doing any better than England right now. Our waiting times are actually worse than English waiting times for the NHS. So
that's bad.
Yeah, hypothetically, if I was a Tory Prime Minister, if I was Rishi Sunak right now, and Nicola Sturgeon came up to me and said, "Hey, can we get more devolved powers?" Yeah, I would tell her to go shove it.
And there's a question I forgot to ask you in the last discussion. How come Scotland gets Holyrood, Wales gets Cardiff Bay, the 6 counties get Stormont, but Cornwall gets nothing?
There is a question for that. Why exactly? Yeah. I mean, there's been talks recently that the Midlands, like the Northern Midlands of England, sorry, the English North should get their own devolved parliament too, because they're just so culturally they're so different to south of England that there's been
parliaments.
Yeah, there's been talk that there should be a regional parliament in like the Northern English places like Southampton and Durham and stuff, around those areas, that there should potentially be a representative parliament, like a devolved power there, which should be interesting. I don't really see. I mean, honestly, I think as a Marxist-Leninist, I do want centralization. I don't think that devolution, as a case study for Scotland, I don't think devolution has actually worked very well. And actually, the SNP are not doing any better than the Tories would up here.
I was going to say that Holyrood is not a bad concept in theory, but Labour and SNP's record has been piss poor. That would be my argument.
Yeah. I mean, COVID proved that. During COVID, there was such confusion about what rules and guidance we should actually follow in Scotland. The English citizens, they followed one government. They followed Westminster because that was their government, and they just followed government advice from Westminster. But in Scotland, we didn't know who to listen to. Nicola Sturgeon was saying something, and then Boris Johnson was saying a different thing, different advice, and we didn't know who to listen to. And I guess
Also,
it came down to a problem. Sorry?
She was on BBC every day announcing new rules and new measures and different rules and different measures. So
Yeah.
even if you'd tried to stay up to date, she would have just changed it anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So people didn't know if they should follow Boris's advice or Nicola Sturgeon's advice, and it caused a lot of confusion. And actually, people say that Scotland did better in solving in dealing with COVID than England, and that's actually not true. Per capita, in proportion to population, Scotland actually had a higher death toll from COVID than England. We had a higher death rate in proportion to population. So it's absolute nonsense to suggest that we did better under SNP. We actually caused confusion, and I really think that confusion actually attributed to high deaths because people didn't know which advice to follow. Anyway, going back onto this bill, the Hate Crime and Public Order Bill. So yeah, we've touched on the idea that the first point, to consolidate, modernise and extend existing hate crime legislation, it's purposefully ambiguous, it's purposefully vague, and that is probably because now Scottish law can kind of bend that to suit whatever they want. So if somebody says a joke when they're drunk, they can now probably the law will probably find a way to fucking fine them or get them in trouble, because it would be considered hate crime. It'd be considered hate speech or a hate crime. Update the list of characteristics, including in hate crime legislation, and creates new stirring up of hatred offences, blah, blah. Protects characteristics of age, disability, religion, sexual orientation, transgender identity, and variations in sex characteristics. Variations in sex characteristics. What does that mean? Like, if someone is like kinky, if somebody's into like kink and BDSM, would they get like... If somebody speaks out, if somebody kink shames someone, can they get fined under new hate speech bills? Like, there's so many hypothetical questions that are not being answered right now. It's like, what are we actually allowed to say?
Section 2F is ambiguous on what prejudice against transgender identity is.
Yeah. Yeah, so, we'll talk about that more when we read out the second bill, but yeah, go ahead if you want to explain that one.
And also, hateful conduct includes speech. And wasn't Scotland once liberal?
Yeah. In theory, yeah.
So, where's free speech there? And according to the definition given by the Hate Crime and Public Order Bill, it covers female to male, male to female, non-binary, cross-dressers, gay people, straight people, and bisexuals are all identified in the bill.
All right.
So, what if you don't identify with one of those identities? Does the bill cover you or not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just so much. Like, these liberals and libertarians are like, oh, it's done to the individual. But there are some individuals out there that will not identify as any of those things characterized. Are they protected? Can we say whatever we want? Like, it's not a watertight bill at all. There's so many loopholes, and I think those loopholes are actually made, or they're on purpose, just to make things confusing. So the law can be like, oh, ha, you fucked up. We have to punish you now. And yeah, like it's liberals pushing these bills. These liberals, these progressives, it's them pushing these bills. And actually, they are the most repressive and like stupid dystopian. Like, this is like so 1984 Orwell. Like, we have to like watch what we're saying. We have to go to certain underground places to just have normal conversations. It's like, it's becoming so Orwellian. And these are liberals. like liberals are literally the new fascists. They literally are, and it's them that are accusing everybody of being fascist because we're going against this stupid trend that they've started, and they're the fascists. They don't see it. I don't think they
Also,
see it.
they're merging corporate power and state power to punish individuals judicially.
Yeah. Yes.
There used to be an ideology built around that.
It started with an F. Can't remember it. Can't remember what it was called, but it started with an F. Yeah. So right. So with this context being said, with these points being made, with this context bearing in your mind that this Hate Crime and Public Order Act is very purposefully ambiguous. There's lots of loopholes. There's lots of hypothetical questions that are being answered. Let's move on to the second bill, which was passed only a
I
few
was going to
months ago.
say, can I just bring up a few
Yeah.
last points?
Yeah, please do.
Harassment is determined by whether a person feels distressed or alarmed. Note, none of those things are determined in the bill. What does distressed mean? What does alarm mean? On also behaviours and communications that a reasonable person considers threatening, abusive, or insulting. Who defines reasonable, threatening, abusive, or insulting? And religious belief was amongst the hate crimes. Does this apply to Christians and other Abrahamic religions? And they say Scottish police must publish annual hate crime statistics.
Yeah.
Is it going to be the raw data, or is it going to be massaged towards a narrative?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And knowing the SNP's track record and even the existence of these bills, we already know the answer to that. It's definitely going to be massaged around a narrative, 100%. It's so decadent. It's so Orwellian. It's almost scary. And yeah, we're sitting here laughing about it, but this is a serious thing. Like university students at my university have been permanently kicked off of their courses because they've said a joke about a trans person, or they've said a joke about somebody of a sexual orientation. A joke which that person had laughed at, and it got a few laughs because it's banter. Scotland and Britain are famous for having a little bit of fucking banter, and yet university students have literally been kicked off of their courses for saying jokes that, are now considered hate speech, even though it was a joke where they laughed and it was banter.
So there's going to be more Mike Meachams.
Yeah.
And they won't even have to get their wee dog to put their paw up.
Oh God, yeah, that was the start of it all. Actually, that was the start of it all. That guy who that was it.
It's a slippery slope.
Oh God, yeah. We literally cannot even make jokes now, or make ironic comments, because somebody might overhear us, and we might lose our education, we might lose our careers, our jobs, we might get fined, we might have to spend hundreds of pounds on a court case, all because we said something that was frowned upon by this liberal, degenerate society. It's absolute horseshit. Is there anything else you'd like to say about crime prevention? Or okay. So yeah, so with this context bear in mind, this what we've just said, this is a new bill that was passed this year, only a couple of months ago in 2022, March 2022. It's called the Gender Recognition Reform Bill. So let me just say some points. So apparently it aims to simplify how trans people can apply for a gender recognition certificate, GRF. So new legislation to improve the system through which transgender people can gain legal recognition has been published. The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill will amend the Gender Recognition Act of 2004 to introduce new criteria for applicants who wish to obtain a gender recognition certificate, a GRF. Obtaining a GRF means a trans person is legally recognised in their required gender and can obtain a new birth certificate showing that gender. The bill will require applicants to make a legally binding declaration that they intend to live permanently in their acquired gender. There will no longer be need to provide medical reports or any evidence whatsoever. Applicants will be required to live in their acquired gender for a minimum of 3 months, with a reflection period of a further 3 months before a certificate is granted. So 6 months living as their acquired gender. That's all it takes. The bill proposes a criminal offence for applicants to make a false statutory declaration with a potential punishment of up to 2 years imprisonment. The bill follows extensive consultation. Almost 2/3, so 60% of respondents to the Scottish Government's 2017 consultation on the principles of gender recognition reform were in favour of introducing a statutory declaration system for legal gender recognition. Social Justice Secretary. So yes, Scotland actually has a Social Justice Secretary. Doesn't exist in Westminster. Just to kind of show a contrast between the progressivism. Yeah, virtue. So yes, the Secretary for Virtue Signalling, Shona Robinson, said trans men and women are amongst the most stigmatised in our society, and many find the current system for obtaining a gender recognition certificate to be intrusive, medicalised, and bureaucratic. Shouldn't it be? Is that supposed to be a bad thing? Sorry. This bill does not introduce any new rights for trans people, but it is about simplifying and improving the process of a trans person to gain legal recognition, which has been a right for 18 years. Our support for trans rights does not conflict with our continued strong commitment to uphold the rights and protections that women and girls currently have under the 2010 Equality Act. This bill makes no change to that act. The Scottish Government has always been keen to seek consensus where possible and to work to support respectful debate. That will remain a guiding principle as the bill progresses to Parliament. So a couple of things I'd like to say about that beforehand is how contrarian those quotes are. So they claim to be committed to upholding the 2010 Equality Act regarding women and girls. And at the same time, in the same fucking sentence, they're saying that they're okay with biological men with dicks who are sexually attracted to females to go into changing rooms and toilets where little girls and women are. And she also says how trans people are against what's happening now because it's intrusive. Isn't this intrusive to women and children? The double standards, the absolute hypocrisy of this degenerate legal system is sickening and perverted. Like seriously, it's so contrarian. There's 44 quotes there, and I've already identified about 3 contradictions.
It's deliberately ambiguous on the use of single-sex spaces, by the way, because it opens up lacunae and it is per incurium. In other words, the loopholes make it bad law, and also the Act reduces the minimum age to apply for gender recognition from 18 years old to 16 years old, yet they claim people aren't trans in children. And also on that 3 month thing, that is down a reduction from 2 years.
Yeah.
So it goes from 2 years to a quarter of a year. How does that work? It's as if it's being encouraged.
Yeah, I have trans friends in real life, and they had to live as their required gender for 2 or 3 years. And in those 2 or 3 years, they had to go to weekly counselling sections to have background checks with their mental health, to make sure they were mentally sound and they understood what they were waiting to go through. 2 or 3 years that needed. And then it was 2 years of treatment. So that's technically 5 years of living as that gender or that sex. Now you can do that for 3 months. That's it. 6 months technically, because it says something about consultations. So let's say half a year. And yeah, they've also reduced the age, so it doesn't just account for 18-year-olds. Kids can now get puberty blockers and stuff now under this new legislation.
And on the puberty blockers, did you see that study recently?
I've seen several studies that all say that it's harmful and but anyway, go ahead.
Well, the recent study said it causes eyesight loss and brain swelling, and previous studies show that after 10 years, the patient or the children get cancer, and also it is irreversible. And did you see the documentary What is a Woman?
Yes, I've seen that.
Did you see the case with Miriam Grossman citing a child going on puberty blockers and getting osteoporosis?
Yes, I've seen.
So,
Yeah, I've seen that documentary. Yeah, very
so
interesting.
that they destroyed that little girl's bones, basically,
Yeah.
and it speaks volumes that Lupron was fined $874 million, and it's not like George Walker Bush was on a crusade against corporations.
Mm.
So I think that speaks volumes on hormones and puberty blockers.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of like chemotherapy. Like, obviously, a lot of people know that I had cancer and I had to go through chemotherapy, and that causes hair loss. It attacks your blood cells. It can attack your liver, so your liver kind of weakens and it's kind of damaged, and that's required to cure cancer. So I mean, if I didn't get that, I would have died. I would have literally died. It was necessary to save my life. This isn't, no. So it's similar chemicals to chemotherapy, which is poison for the body. And actually, obviously, in certain situations has been worse than chemotherapy. It degenerates bones and nerve systems and causes blindness and brain swelling. And after this video is uploaded, I'll link this documentary and these citations and case studies, just so you can check them out for yourself, just so you can believe that we're actually telling the truth, we're not just making this up. So I mean, yeah, I went through that because I had to survive. These people, I mean, it's a identity crisis that they're going through. They're not going to die. It's not life threatening, and yet they're paying money or with the NHS for free. They're getting this for free, and it's potentially extremely dangerous and it has lots and lots of side effects. It's very upsetting, actually.
National insurance. So it is.
Yeah.
And our tax duties. Mm-hmm. When did we consent to chemically castrating and surgically sterilizing children? Was that put on the ballot ever?
No.
Did we have a referendum on it? Did we have a long public debate? I don't seem to recall this. I remember people having a debate on the alternative vote on IndyRef and Brexit. Don't remember this ever being discussed or contested.
And that is because there's an assumption there in society. There's an assumption that we are to just go along with this. We are to just go along and just be okay with what's happening right now to our children and to our society as women and to our society as men. There's been obviously hate crimes against men as well. There's an assumption there that we're just to go along with this and sit down and shut up and just be like, oh, well, this is just how things are. And it's sick and perverted and it's harmful. And yeah, like you said, we didn't get asked our opinion on this because they're terrified. If there was actually a referendum, I think the vast majority of normal, sane people would have voted against this bill. They would have read it and said, I'm a woman, or I have a daughter. I would be very comfortable sending my daughter into a toilet, knowing that there was a potential of a grown man there. And, oh, well, he has a GRC. He has a gender recognition certificate, so I guess that's fine. That's not fine. He still has a dick. He's still sexually attracted to the opposite gender, if we are assuming that he's a heterosexual. So, I mean, it's I
don't think parents would want their sons to be in the same bathroom or space as a predatory pedophilic woman.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. It works both ways for both sexes. I say both sexes with the assumption that we agree that there's only two sexes, and sex is a binary.
Man and woman, male and female.
It's been man and woman in nature for millions of years. Before humans even was a thing, in plants and trees, there's been a binary with sex.
Mammals have existed since the time of the dinosaurs. How did they survive?
The crocodiles. Yeah.
And also, what do people call an adult person who is naturally and biologically ordered towards gestation? And once they've answered that, what do they call an adult person naturally and biologically ordered towards impregnation?
Male and female.
But no lady has ever slept with a man and thought, I wonder if I got him pregnant.
You think? That's quite a controversial assumption to have nowadays, mate.
I've never been impregnated by a lady.
Have you not? Interesting. No. Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah.
It seems like it works the other way.
Maybe your body's just transphobic. Maybe your body, maybe your organs are just bigoted.
My genome's a transphobe and a turf.
Your chromosomes are TERF, man. Get them checked out, bro. So anyway, so some background for this bill. Here's some, let's see, yeah, so the proposal. So this is the kind of stuff that this bill will propose, this gender recognition reform bill. The proposals in the bill include removing the requirement for a medical diagnosis and evidence, so the removal of that. Applications to be made to the Registrar General for Scotland instead of the Gender Recognition Panel, a UK tribunal, just more nationalist tripe. Applicants to make a statutory declaration that they have lived in the acquired gender for a minimum of 3 months before applying, rather than the current period of 2 years, and that they intend to live permanently in the acquired gender. It also proposes that applications are determined by the Registrar General after a further 3-month reflection period. Applicant to be either be, there's a typo there, sorry, I got confused. Applicants to be either be the subject of an entry in a birth or adoption record kept by the Registrar General, or to be ordinary resident in Scotland. So you have to be a Scottish citizen. The automatic recognition in Scots law of gender recognition obtained in the rest of the UK and overseas, unless it would be a manifestly contrary to public policy. The reduction of the minimum age of applicants from 18 to 16, a requirement of the Registrar General to produce an annual report, and the removal of powers to introduce a fee.
And this is what Holyrood does with all of Scotland's problems.
Yeah. As is the case under the existing law, there will be no requirement for applicants to undergo gender reassignment treatment. So even after signing, so even after signing a statutory declaration that they agree to live in that acquired gender for the rest of their life, even after signing that, they don't actually have to get reassignment treatment. I'm moving to England. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm moving to.
Also, I thought that was a worrying section of the bill. Statutory declarations from both parties that marriages and civil partnerships should continue. So basically, they can have their gender ideology, even if it means breaking people up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that was a good criticism, the LGB Alliance, that it increases peer pressure on body dysmorphic youth. And it goes back to the point I made earlier. Yeah, they're transing the children, 16 years old.
16 years old.
And I thought Lucy Hunter Blackburn made a good quote as well. She says, "It is exceptionally poor and a recipe for bad law," and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with that. It's really worrying that this is where society is going. It's a dark path. It's a slippery slope. I'm not sure where we're going to end up in 5 years. Like, this whole trans trend thing, this is a new phenomenon of society. It hasn't been a thing forever. It's a fairly new bandwagon. And yet, only in a matter of years, there's already been bills passed to protect these people. lots of them are mentally ill, and there's other problems. And I'm not saying all trans people are mentally ill, but I am saying that suicide rates for the trans community in Britain is 40% higher than the average population. And that mass of a difference, that mass of disparity, cannot just be down to bullying and discrimination. That cannot be the case. If it was the case, then why aren't suicide rates higher for black people, people of colour? Because they're not. Suicide rates for black people are less than white people. That's a fact. That's a That's a statistical fact. So if suicide rates are 40% higher for trans people, then how can liberals sensibly think that is all wholeheartedly down to just bullying? Oh, well, they're bullied and discriminated against. It's absolute nonsense. There's a mental health crisis behind all this that no one is willing to talk about.
They've never been more affirmed, yet the spike just keeps increasing. And also, even without the suicidality, gender dysphoria has higher comorbidities than the average population, and 7 to 10 years after surgical transition is when they're most suicidal. And there are a few reasons this is being pushed, because the big pharmaceutical corporations make billions off hormones and the puberty blockers, whereas in America anyway, doctors and hospitals make millions off of surgical transitions. So there are profit motives there, and basically there are other corporations trying to pander and cater to a market to increase their profits as well. So that's why you saw 100 of the biggest corporations in Britain affirming their support for trans rights. And if trans rights are human rights, why does it need the qualifier trans rights if they're not asking for special treatment? Like, is it a human right to basically expose yourself to children?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's an interesting point, actually. If trans rights are human rights, then why isn't just trans identity and trans-related issues just added and amended to the 2010 Equality Act? If they're just human beings, like the rest of us, then why can't they just add that and amend that to the Equality Act of 2010? They don't have to make an entirely new bill just dedicated and isolating and highlighting trans rights. If they're human rights, then why can't we just add that to the 2010? Just add it and amend it, and that's it. Boom, sorted. And I mean, yeah, if trans rights are human rights, then that, and I'm going to get hated for this, but if we are just going to solely be promoting trans rights, that will come at a detriment to women's rights, to female rights. It has to. Those two things cannot work together. Because if you're upholding trans rights, you're saying it's okay for biological men, yes, biological men, because they have penises, and that's what a man is, to go into female toilets without having to show medical proof that they've even changed gender. So you're saying that this is okay, and that this is a trans rights, and you're also saying that you're promoting women's rights, even though these people are their private spaces are being invaded. So you can't say both work together. They don't. They contradict each other. It's either one or the other at the expense of one. Like that's how that equation will work.
There's 2 points I'd like to make on that. In women's prisons, the number of pregnancies are going up, and newspapers report this as in a woman impregnated other women. And you're thinking, how did that happen? and also it's a simple comeback when anyone calls me a TERF, and basically I respond by going, "Why would you assume that I'm a radical feminist?" And then the next insult is misogynist. And then I say, if I'm such a misogynist, then why is it you who is trying to erase womanhood?
Exactly. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Well, we're the misogynists, but it's them that think it's okay to just decimate what's left of security and safety for biological women. It's them destroying that. We're the ones trying to protect that and uphold that and keep that the way it is because they deserve those safe spaces in society. But we're the misogynists because we can't accept the fact that men can now be classed and treated like women. Yeah, it's like and it's common sense. If you spoke to any working class person, the vast majority of us them agree with what we're saying. They don't understand what's going on right now with the law, with society, with these woke left just taking over everything that we're talking about. They've infected the minds of millions of people. Like, if you speak to a normal working class sane person, just a normal guy, he'll agree with us because it's normal, and we're just expected to go along with it. And it's like, no, there has to be backlash. Something has to give for people to finally be like, nah, okay, this is a step too far. If this doesn't do it, then it just means that for a while things are going to have to get worse until more people start speaking out against it. But that brings me to actually my question, a question to you. So, do you think that it's a coincidence, or do you think that this is a orchestrated attack, that these two bills have been introduced very close to each other? Do you think that's a coincidence?
No, it's definitely an orchestrated attack. From the same ministers, the same executive, the same legislators in Holyrood. It just seems like an SNP attack on those who oppose their radical, socially liberal agenda, which is also the agenda of their donors.
Very good point. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's absolutely no coincidence that these two bills have been passed months from each other, like about a year. It's absolutely no coincidence at all. This is an orchestrated attack against normal, sane people in society. It's pandering to pseudoscience. It's pandering to delusion. It's pandering to mental illness. It's pandering to degeneracy. Nothing good can come from this. It's not based in reality. It's not based in material truth. It's not based in anything. It's not based in science. Most science hate what's happening right now. The ones who are supposed to, like you said, have donors, they're making money from these puberty blockers and surgeries, these medicines. They're making money from it, so of course they're going to be supportive of it. Like all this stuff's happening. It's absolutely no coincidence at all. This is an orchestrated attack against the normal people, working class people, and people have to realize that soon. And so the loophole here, the fact that this is a trap, is that this gender recognition bill has been passed, which has its problems. And then just a year before this, the Hate Crime Prevention and Public Order Act was passed. So pretty much, if you speak out against this, and also I said earlier that this was an amendment, and the hate crime is also an amendment from a previous act. So the reason this is an amendment, the hate crime bill is an amendment, is because trans identity related crimes has been added to it, and it wasn't before. This is a purposeful attack against the normal people. So now, with this new Gender Recognition Act bill, if you speak out against what's happening, you can get punished by Scottish law under hate crime prevention. So if you show uncomfortableness to biological men with dicks who are presumably heterosexual going into female safe spaces in society, you can now be punished legally, either fined or imprisoned, for under hate crime for speaking out against it. It's a loophole, it's a trap, it's a tripwire, like you said earlier. Just tell me your thoughts on that, if you agree or you disagree, or if there's anything else you want to say about this.
I agree,
ridiculous
but
scam that's been going on.
the, there might be some misguided liberal SNP supporters who think, oh, they just want to help trans people. Scotland already has a health crisis. It already has a mental health crisis and a suicide crisis. Now, they are not helping gender dysphoric people this way. As we discussed earlier, it increases the suicidality and the comorbidities. If they think the health crisis, the mental health crisis, and the suicide crisis in Scotland is bad now, imagine in 5 months or in 5 years.
Yeah.
Could you imagine how much worse it is going to get? And how will Holyrood fix that?
By blaming it on Westminster like they always do.
Yeah, but if, as we discussed in the last video, yes wins, what then? You can't go down to Westminster and say, can we have some more? No.
Yeah.
It's on your watch. You're funding yourself through the North Sea. So it's your problem. You created the problem. You're going to have to deal with it. They can't just blame and point fingers forever.
Speaking to you is a breath of fresh air, honestly.
Like, I know, I support independence, but the SNP are making a pig's ear of things.
Yeah. Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak anymore. I don't want to ruin it because that was a really good closing statement. That was a really good way to end it. Yeah, that was speaking to you as a breath of fresh air, man. Seriously, like, if you go on Facebook or Twitter and you say stuff like this, you'll get so much shit for it. You'll get hated and cancelled and blocked. And these are real issues that actually affect working people. Like, working class people can now be punished for saying certain things because it's offensive or it's hate speech. And it's just dystopian and authoritarian and Orwellian. And it's really worrying. It really worries me. It's a really scary time right now. So I mean, we should be allowed to speak about it. And who knows? Maybe this stream will eventually be deleted by YouTube because it breaks hate speech regulation. Even though we have said absolutely nothing hateful at all about anyone in this entire live stream.
Well, not apart from the SNP.
Apart from the yeah, sorry, yeah, we have yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, seriously, we have said nothing derogative or harmful or rude or discriminatory or hateful towards any group that is listed in this. These characteristics, and yeah, this stream has the potential to be restricted and potentially even taken down because it might break some sort of hate crime, which is absolute fucking nonsense.
I agree.
Yeah, so I think we're just going to wrap it up anyway now. It's been about an hour. You said a great closing statement. I don't even want to give a closing statement because it'll be nowhere near as good as yours. If you want to say any final comments, any last thing you want to say before we
just one final thing.
Yeah,
just one final thing. Imagine getting into a time machine and going back to ancient Caledonia and telling the Picts what the future would be.
They don't kill themselves.
Or they might have killed you for saying something so ridiculous.
You've had too much whiskey, mate. Too much whiskey. You've lost your mind. Oh, yeah, no, it's a very good point. Yeah, man. So anyway, yeah, that's the live stream done. Thank you very much for watching. If you've stuck by and actually watched it to the end and not went off because you went in a huff because there's some stuff we said. If you're still here, thank you very much. Please subscribe to my channel. I'll link Èamonn's channel in the comments when this video is up on YouTube, so you can check his out and subscribe to his channel. And yeah, thank you very much. So I'll see you in the next one.